And I'm going to give you real quickly 7 ingredients that we must have for our marriage to last the distance. So the first thing is faith. And then we see something else in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 1. He says that you are to submit. He talks about accepting God's plan for your home. And when he does that, he starts off by telling the women to submit to the husband as the head of the homes. 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 3 says that God has placed, and I'm just the message boy, I'm just here to give you this, and this is what it says. He says, if you want to know, and listen, you can choose to ignore this. You can say that's not modern enough. That's not progressive enough for the way I see it. But he says, I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So you must accept God's plan for the home. The second word is acceptance. What does that mean? That means you accept one another's role. And the man is the head. That does not say the man is the boss. The head of the home is not the boss of the home. Then what does it mean? What does the head of the home mean? It means you have, as the man, the responsibility of the home. You see, equality of worth is established in the Bible. He said we're neither male nor female in God's eyes. And he says there's no one worth more than the other. But when it comes to function, we're not the same in the function. And God said the head of the home, not the boss of the home. And the word head means responsibility. It does not mean you have greater privilege. It does not mean that you have greater privilege. It means you have greater responsibility. It means if the marriage is not working, you have greater responsibility, sir. To be the head of the home means if the family is in shambles, you have greater responsibility. It means you take responsibility. It means you have to do the best that you can do and understand the failure. If I let my family fall to pieces, it's not her fault. I have to take responsibility and I have to understand. And God says, if you understand this and each one understands their role, then you can begin to have the ingredients, faith, and then understanding the role that each one and acceptance of that role. A lot of fussing and fighting over this very thing. But once it begins to get in place, God can bless that home. Thirdly, there's contentment. 1 Peter chapter 3, it said that we're heirs together. When you study the life of Abraham and you study the life of Sarah, they had a spirit of contentment. When they started out, they were not wealthy. Now, Abraham became extremely wealthy and Sarah became extremely wealthy. The Bible said they had very much cattle, gold, silver, and land and possessions. They were extremely wealthy later in life, but when they started out, they had nothing. They were not wealthy. They learned the secret of contentment. And that's why the Bible said they're heirs together, meaning that if you don't have this and you don't have that, really, if you reach that point where I have my husband, I have my wife, and I have my God, and I have food, and I have clothes, and I am content, then you will begin to see the blessing of God. We're living in such a materialistic society. We live in under such financial pressure, and we don't understand the secret of contentment. When you can get along with God and with one another, and Jesus said, if you've got food and clothing, be content. If you've got more than that, I'm happy for you. If you've got just everything that money can buy, I'm happy for you. The Bible said God takes pleasure in the prosperity of his servants. But to whom little is not enough, nothing is enough. And if you can't be happy, just you and your wife, or you and your husband and God, you won't be happy when it's you and your wife in 10 homes and 10 cars and 10. It all goes back down to what really matters in life. If you have your wife, if you have your husband, if you have your God, if you've got food and clothing, you have all that you need for contentment in your life. The next thing that we see in this text, the next ingredient is forgiveness. For he goes on to say in 1 Peter 3, beginning with verse 8 through 10, be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love for one another, tender-hearted, be courteous, be loving. In other words, what he's saying is you got to be forgiving. All married people must learn to forgive, not returning evil for evil and reviling or just attacking, reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, knowing that if you're in marriage, you're called to not to be courteous, to not render evil for evil, to not render attack for attack. You're called to this. And then he goes on to say, if you want, the next verse says, would you like to love life? Isn't that powerful? He who would love life. How many of you want to love your life? How many of you are tired of getting up and being mad? How many of you would like to get up and love life today? He said, I'm going to tell you how to do it. How many of you would like to see good days? How many of you like to see good days in your house? The Bible said in Deuteronomy that your home could be filled with days of heaven on earth. That's a Bible verse, that your days will be as heaven. How many of you like to see good days, and how many of you like to love your life? He said, then let them refrain, and this is all in context with don't give them as good as they send you. Don't forget, be courteous, be kind, be forgiving, love one another. He said, and refrain your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking guile, the King James says. All married people must learn to forgive. All married people must practice forgiveness. And you know the number one thing that destroys homes, literal physical homes, is not tornadoes, is not earthquakes, it's termites. The number one destroyer, little bitty things that you let crawl into your house, and those little things team up, and little things, that bitterness, that unwillingness to forgive, that spirit that carries a grudge, that spirit not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing, but counterwise blessing. So there are 3 levels that you can live life on. The first level is the hellish level. And the hellish level is when you give back evil for good. That somebody's being good to you and doing good to you and trying to do good to you, and you turn around with a bitter, angry spirit and rail at them. And they're doing good and you're doing evil. That's the hellish level. And then there's the human level. The human level is, well, if you're good to me, then I'll be good to you. If you're kind to me, then I'll be kind to you. If you're loving to me, then I'll be loving to you. That's human level love. I'll give you what you give me. If you hurt me, I'll hurt you. That's really how human level functions. I do to you what you do to me. Hellish level says I do good to you if you do evil to me. But heavenly level says I will do and give you back good for evil. Not railing for railing, not attack for attack, but good for evil. Listen to me. And sometimes the wife has to practice it. And sometimes the husband has to be the one who this time I'm going to give good from evil. And we cannot allow ourselves to not function in forgiveness. Forgiveness is so important, and the longer we allow those termites to come up through the floor and eat away at our homes and destroy because of bitterness and unforgiveness. The 5th thing, I'm almost done. The 5th thing we see in this text is communication. He says, he that loves life, as I said, will refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking guile. Abraham and Sarah were so different. The Lord spoke to me and said, Jentezen and Sharice are so different. So different. But Proverbs 18:21 says you've got to learn to communicate. Death and life are in the power of your tongue. And then romance. Likewise, you husbands, dwell together with them with knowledge. Dwell means to live with, sharing. Dwell means not just to be in the house, but to dwell, to live with, in sharing. The physical part of marriage. Giving honor. Listen to those words. Everybody say those words. Giving honor to the wife. Giving honor to the wife. There's nothing worse than to hear a guy put his wife down publicly and privately. Giving honor. Giving honor. God, help us to give honor. Give honor to your wife. Give honor, value. Show her that she is the number one human relationship in your life. Sincere compliments. Sincere compliments. No cheap jokes. Everybody needs compliments. Everybody. When Sharice tells me I look good, I feel so good. I feel, whether I look good or not, I believe it if she tells me. We need to give more compliments to one another. We need to speak more things. If you think it, speak it. If you think it, if you think they're amazing, if you notice something and you see them doing something and you think, that's incredible. It's so easy to keep that to yourself, but say it. Give compliments to one another. Speak it. Use your communication skills. Keep joy and excitement and romance in your marriage. Call your spouse and check in with them all day. Communicate. Tell them you're on your ride home. The Love Mobile is coming in. Sensitize your lips. I'll be there. Do something that speaks and verbalizes your love one for another. Do it spontaneously. Do it as often as you can. Say, I love you out loud. Let your children hear it. Let people see it. But most of all, let her know it. Let him know it. Men don't always want to be the aggressor. Men also want to know that their wife wants them and desires them. How do you fight fair? I'm almost done. Here's the last point. The last thing we see in this text is he says, make sure that you do all of these things that I've said, that your prayers be not hindered. The last thing, the last ingredient is prayer. Prayer in the marriage. Prayer in the family. Prayer in the home. Praying for one another. Agreeing. Speaking the name of Jesus over your family. The name of Jesus over your marriage. And I know this isn't some super duper sermon this morning, but if we could just practice half of what we're preaching up here today, our homes, we would see good days. We would have... life. We would see more contentment and peace and joy and moments that really is all we have when it's all said and done with one another. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that you can get notifications on new posts and live streams. Be sure to share this video with a friend. You never know how you can send the Word of God right when somebody needs to hear it. And you can use your social influence for good, for the glory of God. Thanks again. Share it with a friend. And I really appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.